Dr. Laura Cornell, Yogeshwari, to be with us.
Thank you, Chris. You're so expressive, and it's been just a wonderful relationship and friendship that we've had. And you're right, when I was looking at your books, when I was being called to write about or to investigate and explore yoga and ecology, you were pretty much it. There was a few others, but you really had written quite a bit on yoga and ecology, and your conference that you had done with the Forum on Religion and Ecology. And I'm like, I sent out 100 letters to people saying, would you like to endorse this value statement? And a very small handful were as enthusiastic as you in your reply. And you were like, how can I help? So you got involved right away. And that was wonderful. And I was also remember when you were talking about starting the master's program, when you took me with another student to India in 2006. And it has blossomed so beautifully. And thank you for that. And also, you just volunteered and jumped on to my dissertation committee without being asked, or I believe even paid. You just really said, I need to be part of this, and as well as the nonprofit association that came up at that time. So thank you for that incredible support. Yeah, and all that you do for yoga in the world. So welcome everyone tonight. Can I see the chat? You know what would be really fun for me is for everyone to put in the chat your name and where you're from. And if you could learn one thing tonight about the moon salutation, what would it be? So that I can read that and get an orientation to where we are. And I'm guessing that I understand this is for the master's program at LMU, as well as in yoga, as well as open to the public. So I'm guessing we have a mix of both your master's students and the public tonight. So our topic is the moon salutation. And I'd like to talk some about the moon in our spiritual, psychological lives as human beings, as on this planet. And then what was the impetus for the moon salutation being birthed, being created? I'm guessing those of you in the master's program have studied some about the complex history of the sun salutation. As Chris has mentioned, there's definitely an ancient origin of pranams, prayers to morning sun, all going back to the Gayatri mantra, or saying prayers. And just as humans, I'm going to say again, existentially, we feel joy when we see the sun. There's this sense of, yay, it's a new day, it's the sun. And this is what inspired those early prayers and pranams, reaching up and then touching the earth, facing the sun. And I would say similarly, existentially, we feel awe when we see the moon. Chris mentioned it's the full moon. It may have been before a lot of you came on. People were coming on gradually. But tonight, this is Wednesday, November 17. We are almost at full moon. The exact full moon, I checked it, will be at 1 a.m. Pacific in a day and like 5 hours. So we're within that day and a half where it looks like a full moon. So you have both with the full and the new moon, you have 3 days to enjoy it. You have 3 days of a full moon, every full moon, and there's a feeling, I guess you're not that different from me. Most people feel celebration in their hearts. We feel like, wow. And in India, they say all month long, we send our prayers to the moon, and on full moon, she sends them back. Sometimes it's seen as masculine, right? Because the moon is in the Indian tradition, not necessarily feminine. But the dark moon, most of us feel like peacefulness, quiet. Where's the moon? There's no light. And if you go back to a time before all this wonderful electricity, right? I've got my power going, which enables us to be together with Zoom. Isn't that cool? And I have all these lights. There's a dome light there. Before that, before you had light in your house or street lights, the moon would have been so prominent. And when she was full, you feel like staying up later and sitting around and telling stories or dancing under the full moon. And when it's dark, you go to bed earlier. That's just normal human practice, and especially much more prominent before lights, before electrical lighting. So in most traditional calendars, it's still a lunar calendar, and the Vedic calendar is a very, very good example of that. We just passed Diwali, which is the Festival of Lights, which is the new moon that we just had, I guess, 12 days ago. And then the previous month was Navratri, the 9 nights of the goddess. Nine meaning, sounds like you all have 3 semesters of Sanskrit. That's awesome. Nine, Nava meaning 9, and Ratra meaning night. So there's a fall Navratri and a spring Navratri, and they both happen at a time when the weather is medium. It's not too hot and not too cold. So it's a very temperate, peaceful feeling, and it happened starting on the new moon for 9 nights. And now before we left the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and here now we're living in Sedona. I'm in Sedona, Arizona. I was attending an ashram primarily with people, expats from India. And we would celebrate Navratri with dancing. They would take me to their dancing festivals and we would dance in the ashram. And these people have stamina for dancing. I mean, hours and hours and hours. I would be the first one to go home and go to bed because I kind of have a regular bedtime. It's just it's better for me, especially now. And we'll talk a little bit about menopause. Now that I've hit that time of life, for me, it's better to go to bed at a certain time. So, what I want to say is that we've gotten away from letting the moon be as prominent in our lives. We've gotten away from letting our calendar be based on the moon. First calendars of every people were based on the moon, waxing and waning. And so that's just one of the ways I believe that our society, our world, it's all societies, this is global, have become imbalanced, masculine and feminine. Because when you honor the moon and the sun, I believe you're more in tune with nature and you're more in tune with your masculine and your feminine side. And yoga is no exception. And I'll go into that a little bit. But at first, I'm just going to pause and read your comments here. So let me just see what you've all said and say hello to you all. Going back to the top. Nandini from Orange County. Kathleen, Pasadena. Amrit, you would like to learn a new variation. Okay, Amrit, I actually have 6 variations in some handouts if you'd like a copy of that. Rebecca from California. Hi, Charlotte, I feel like I've met you. Angelica from Phoenix, or Angelica Vijay Deer from UCLA. Charlotte from Santa Monica, Odera, Los Angeles. The power of tuning in. Interesting. Do you mean tuning into your soul, tuning into your spirit? Monica from South Shore, Kentucky. All right, Inglewood, California. Feminine aspect of the Moon Salutation, Sachi, Los Angeles. Met you in 05 at the Green. Okay, great. Los Angeles, learn more about the feminine aspect of Moon Salutations and when is the best time to practice. Great. So if I leave any questions out, maybe at the end, I don't know if Chris, if you're tracking the questions, or Christine, if you're tracking the questions, but somebody will let me know at the end if I haven't answered all the questions. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the history of the Moon Salutation, and we will do 2 variations tonight. This is an extremely short time. I've been told we have an hour total and then up to another half hour if we want for Q&A. So that would be end of 9 your time is kind of like go to bedtime, and that's 10 my time. So that's definitely go to bedtime. So this is going to be really short. And for those of you who want more, I'm happy to send you 6 variations. I also want to recommend this book here, Moon Salutations, which, as Chris mentioned, was published 2 years ago in 2019. You can get it for bookstores or libraries on Ingram Spark. It's available for individuals to purchase on Amazon. There's 10 different variations of the Moon Salutation here, including variations for total beginners, people with knee challenges or tight hips, as well as people who want more advanced. There's a Mother Mary Moon Salutation, so there's different variations. You can get that. And if you'd like me to send you the graphics of the 6 major ones here that are in here, I'm happy to send you that graphic. You can put your email. I don't know how you handle this, Chris, but if there's a way that if they want to share their email with me here or another way, I'm happy to send those as well, or they're in the book. Yeah. Um, I will just say that I'm completing my third book. I don't know if I told you this, Chris. It's called Moon Glow.
Mm.
Moon Glow, a self-love guided journal and coloring book for women, and it should be out in January. So anybody who wants to find out, that'll become available for pre-order in December. And if you'd like to be notified, again, send me your email here, or you can, in the chat, or you can go to divinefeminineyoga.com and put your email in there. I do love supporting women's circles. I lead women's circles and writing circles. And yes, I've been coaching women for 10 years now. And I really feel that women healing ourselves and men healing ourselves as well. That's not where I'm working in the moment, but it's so, so important. I'm going to take a breath. So I am sure that those of you in the master's program have had quite an introduction to the beautiful, creative, fertile intermixing of Western and Indian cultures that led to yoga being introduced in the West. It's not a simple translation, it's a complicated translation. And one of those dialogue points has been feminism, in the sense of when asana began to really become popular in India in, let's say, 1920s, with the first really powerful or popularized yoga schools where they were practicing postures, what we call the beginning of modern yoga. At the very beginning, it was controversial to include women. And this is something that's like almost unthinkable to us now, 100 years later, but that was the reality, and really it fit with their social norms. That's not surprising given where they were at as a culture. And the most classic texts of yoga were written in communities that were primarily celibate, and primarily men teachers and men students. Now, I don't think that's 100% the case, right? Even if that is the case, you're going to have some places where women are included, even if it's not the norm, and places where people are teaching their wives or their mothers or their daughters. I think that was always going on. But as far as the dominant stream, it was considered very unusual to include women. Now, Krishnamacharya he did, bring in Indra Devi, and he was derided for it, criticized for it, but he felt strongly that he needed to teach women. And there's, of course, a lot more that could be said about that, but and he said different things by the end of his life, that if women were not included, it would not pass on to the next generation. He needed to teach. And there's some people who believe he actually taught his wife or his daughters before he brought in Indra Devi, but somehow women were included, perhaps controversial.
I'll be quiet. Yeah, I'll put my headphones on.
Oh, no,
I'm going to my sushi.
he needs to get muted. I'm going to let yeah, okay. So, there were many teachers that came to the West from India of asanas, and most of them were men. Of course, Indra Devi, you mentioned, a woman. But most of them were men, and they had been trained classically in the traditional. And at first, the instruction was, let's say in the 1920s, if you are a woman, okay, well, we'll let you in, but if you're menstruating, don't practice. If you're pregnant, don't practice. And we know that, menstruation is a good part of the month for a woman. It's like 3 days of a strong cycle, maybe another 3 days of a moderate or mild cycle. And that just didn't feel right to women as they were being taught. And so you have this American, like, feminist brewing hitting up against this more classical. There's a little tension there, a little friction there. And one place where this friction showed up was at the Kripalu Center, which is, perhaps it's not as well known in the West Coast, but it's one of the best known in the East Coast, and it's certainly the largest residential yoga. Currently, it's a retreat center. They're struggling with coronavirus opening like everybody, but they pre that, let's just say they had a 300 or 400 bed, depending on how you count, facility for yoga retreats, and they were at first a celibate ashram. In the 1980s, they were a celibate ashram with Amrit Desai, and I mean, most people were being celibate, not the guru, as it turned out, but the women there were very feminist, and they were reading a lot of the books that were out in our culture at that time, The Feminine Face of God, and many books about chanting and including women. And here they were being taught the Sun Salutation, and it didn't feel right to them on their periods. They were not being told not to practice on their periods, but they weren't being told what to do. And this is now, if we think back, let's say 30, 40 years ago, it's, again, for us where we stand, it's hard to even imagine, because we have so come to understand that you adapt the practice throughout the month. You adapt the practice during pregnancy. You adapt the practice as you hit that bumpy period of the transition into menopause. And so this wasn't the norm. And they weren't being taught by their teachers because the knowledge wasn't out there yet. It hadn't been standardized, it hadn't been experienced. And so women had to discover this for themselves. And so at the Kripalu Center, some of the senior women teachers who were creating curriculum, creating retreats for the attendees at their large and growing and burgeoning retreat center, were experimenting with what really felt good in their bodies. And, now we recognize a whole series of poses that we understand are some of the best poses for menstrual cramps or preventing them, and some of the best poses for pregnancy, and some of the things that are contraindicated during pregnancy, and also for perimenopause. And they put these together in the Moon Salutation. Now, interestingly, the Sun Salutation is a forward, aiming at the sun, kind of forwards and backwards. And yes, Chris mentioned militaristic. They say that it was a warrior training for warriors in the time of the Ramayana. If you want to be strong like a warrior, they used it during the Indian independence. It was like this national pride. The Sun Salutation is from us, and let's practice it to get strong. It was in PE classes. The YMCA helped to spread it around India. And it's good for standing in a row. The Sun Salutation is forwards and backwards. Well, interestingly, the best poses for a woman, for opening up the belly and the hips at these times are side bending. And so when you do the Moon Salutation, it's a sideways flow, which doesn't do so well in rows. You can, but it really feels like let's do it in a circle. And isn't that what the moon inspires us to be in a circle? The moon is a circle. I mean, you can see it because you can actually look at it. Of course, the sun is a circle, but you can't really look at it because it's too bright. But the moon inspires this feeling of awe, of wanting to be in a circle. And interestingly, also in the temples of India, most of them are rectangular or some variation of that, and they go up. The only temples that are built in a circle in India are the yogini temples, the feminine goddess temples. They're in a circle. They have goddesses facing in. You have a couple of them in Orissa, to the goddess, to the Great Mother, different forms of the Great Mother. And so I believe there's an archetypal nature to this that is not accidental. I will say that for women, practicing the Sun Salutation is great when you want that athleticism or that warm-up or that sense of connecting with the sun or goal orientation. And there are times when the Sun Salutation is too heating, for example, if you're having hot flashes, or it's too heating if you're having a difficult menstrual cycle, or if you're pregnant. you really shouldn't be doing a belly down pose up into cobra when you're pregnant, or a deep forward bend with your legs closed. You can do a forward bend with wide legs. You can do pyramid with your legs apart and the belly in front of that front thigh. But so the Moon Salutation has all of the best poses, standing poses, for pregnancy, perimenopause, and menstruation. And I would say for men, practicing the Moon Salutation opens up that sideways kind of dreamy eros consciousness of the moon, which is a balance to the Sun Salutation. I personally believe we all have a divine feminine and a divine masculine, and they need to come into balance. We need to enhance both. And for men also, to honor the moon, to honor the dreamy side rather than just always being goal oriented, is very soulful and very, very important. And in this book, I have a whole chapter devoted to men and stories of men who practice the Moon Salutation and teach the Moon Salutation. So it's not just a flow for women, even though it came out of a need of women's bodies to have something. And I'm going to go back. You used the word yin yang in yoga or Ayurveda. We would use the terms pramana and lankana, heating and cooling, right? So certain postures are known to be heating. In general, the standing postures, the strong postures, the arm balances are heating, but also back bends are heating, like cobra is a heating pose. And part of it is the way that it gets the body to breathe. You're expanding the ribs, you're expanding the chest. We could say it's yang. And then the lankana would be the cooling phase, and the yin. And that is what you need when you're bleeding, menstruating, or going through perimenopause, because the body gets very warm at those times. And we need a cooling, calming, nourishing practice. And I just want to say one more thing about menstruation. I believe our culture has gotten really out of balance about menstruation. And for example, in the traditional cultures, women would rest. I mean, it's just a simple 4-letter word, R-E-S-T. It's not hard, really, if you think about it. But our culture doesn't allow time for rest. We're going 24/7 and definitely 5 days a week, all year long. Maybe you're lucky if you take a little vacation. We're not good at rest. And traditional cultures valued women resting on menses, period. And they saw this as a time when women were more spiritually attuned and more psychic. There has been research showing that women have different types of dreams when they're menstruating than when they're ovulating. And just physically, I will say that's a lot of blood. It's a lot of tissue, right? Getting ready to have a baby is a big deal. And you make a lot of lining in the uterus. And so we pretend like it isn't a big deal. We pretend like it doesn't matter, that the body has to squeeze that out of this little tiny hole of the cervix and slough off all that tissue and blood. Once I went to a workshop on the pelvic floor, and she showed us the size of the uterus when it's full of blood and tissue. And it's not that big, but the size, I want to say, I need to look up this fact. It's not in my book. It's like 2 or 3 times. It shrinks and expands. That's a big deal for an organ to do. Of course, our lungs shrink and expand, but it's a lot of tissue. And so from my personal experience, once I started resting more on my period, I stopped having cramps. And when I wasn't resting on my period, and I was addicted to the ibuprofen, I could have some evil cramps and be pretty crabby. And I believe that if our culture supported women to rest on their periods, women would be much healthier overall. And we would all learn something about coming into balance with nature. And I'll say here in Sedona, I heard recently there's a group of young women. I'm no longer bleeding, but there's a group of young women in Sedona that support each other when they're on their period. Other women bring them food, and even their men friends, not their boyfriends, not their husband, not their father, not their children. There's a group, there's like this social group that has formed around helping women rest on their periods. Can you imagine like a group of young men saying, we honor you on your moon? And there is a connection between the moon and the woman's menstrual cycle. They are each 29 and a half days. There is no other mammal, and it's mammals who menstruate. There is no other mammal that has a menstrual cycle of 29 and a half days. The human being is aligned with the moon. Christiane Northrup, who wrote Women's Bodies, Women Wisdom, cites research saying that when women are removed from lights, artificial lighting, when they're sleeping, and instead, there's no like little green lights flashing in your room, no phones flashing in your room, they're exposed to moonlight, which is 13% as bright as the sun on the moon, a full moon. That's significant. And no moon on the dark moon, no light. They will start to ovulate on the full moon and menstruate on the new moon. I don't know very many women whose cycles are that perfect. And definitely our hormones have been thrown off by stress and by artificial lighting. But that's what she said. The research shows that women's cycles tend that way. So ancient peoples had to notice that. So yes, saying a woman is on her moon is actually correct. And so I was very touched when I heard that there's a group here that they're doing that. And there's even a restaurant, if you're ever in Sedona, called Chocolate Tree, where they encourage women to take one day off completely and not come in as a server on their menstrual cycle. So wouldn't it be cool? Let's just imagine a world where we start to align with that. It's really truly support women's health. And what would that do for the family? What would that do for friendships? What would that do for happiness? What would that do for us remembering our relationship to nature? So
have 1%.
So in a minute, I'm gonna get up. We're gonna do. Is there anything else I want to say? So pregnancy, I think I've talked about that. The sun salutation is. You could do a modified sun salutation if you were pregnant, yeah. But the full moon salutation is just awesome for pregnancy. Perimenopause. What I will say is, all women are different. Some women don't have any problem, and may that be you. May you have no problem going through that transition. But for many women, it's quite bumpy. I would say, especially in our culture where we are busy and we don't rest enough and we're not in balance. I will say anything that hasn't been resolved or brought home either physically, emotionally, psychologically, it will have to be looked at perimenopause. And some of the challenges can be hot flashes, can be trouble sleeping. Normally when you're bleeding, our psychology goes in a cycle with that because estrogen, progesterone, all the luteinizing hormones, those all have not just physical effects, but brain effects, right? They affect your mood. And so when a woman is in that transition, am I going to still keep bleeding or am I going to stop? It can get bumpy, like a Ferris wheel, right? You've got a Ferris wheel. Am I going to do another round or am I going forwards? Am I going back? Periods can get shorter, longer. You can bleed a long time, or it can be very bumpy, but not everyone experiences that. And so grounding, being more peaceful, being more yin, supporting your energy, and just seeing what new wants to come up into your life, and letting that happen, letting yourself be a new person, because it feels like a new experience for sure. Let me see if there's anything else I want to say before I stand up. No, I think with that, I'm going to stand up. We're going to all get up. I encourage you to find a place where we're going to do a very gentle crescent moon flow, very, very simple. and then I'll show you the full circular moon salutation, and we'll talk it through. So I'm going to turn my camera around facing a blank wall, and I'm going to encourage you to go somewhere that you can stand up. Getting stuck here. Am I still stuck? Okay, there we go. Let me change cameras. Beautiful. Okay, I'm taking off my slippers and my socks if you're warm enough. Okay, I'm just gonna warm up here because I'm a little chilly sitting. As I'm jumping, I'm remembering the beautiful moon outside. She's rising here in Arizona and probably California as well. Okay, so this is called 3 phases of the moon flow. It's very simple. It's great to do with beginners, great to do in a large group or when you don't really know a group or know their level of experience, okay? Because it's pretty simple. You can also do it sitting in a chair. I'll just show you. I have a little bench here. You could do it just sitting, right? If you're like, oh, I don't really want to stand up, you could sit on a stool and do the exact same thing with us. You can do it in bed before you go to bed, on the side of your bed or sitting on a chair. So I'm going to bring the balls of my feet together, and I'm going to take my hands by my side, and I'm rooting through the earth, reaching up through the crown of the head, and reaching my fingertips down towards the earth. And then I'm going to trace the shape of the full moon. My arms come to the side, up overhead, and I'm going to interlace fingers. We call this now temple pose. So I've just extended my first finger, I don't know if you can see that, and my other fingers are interlaced. I'm going to come into crescent moon. I will mirror you. So let's say I'm going to the right. You all can come to the right. Inhale up. And we'll do crescent moon to the other side. Exhaling as you go into crescent. Inhale up. And then we're going to come into what I call dark moon. This is the other phase. Bend the knees and take the hands down to the ground and let your head go down. And take 3 extra breaths here. As I said, when there's a full moon, you get to see her for 3 nights. When there's a new moon, you don't see the moon. She's dark for 3 nights. And we're going to repeat that. So it goes inhaling, the arm side all the way up. Exhale, crescent moon. Inhale up. Exhale, second side. Inhale up. Exhale, dark. Touch the ground. Extra breath in and out. In and out. One more time. In and out. We're going to repeat. Inhale the arms up. Crescent moon right. And up. Crescent moon left. And up. Exhale, dark moon. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. last time in silence. Touching Mother Earth, bowing the head. Beautiful. And release in any way that feels good to you. Charlotte, or whoever's our helper, am I able to share my screen? Let me see if I can. Oh, I can. I have permission. I love that. Okay, I just wanted you to get to see this. So this is one of the pictures from the book. It's called Three Phases of the Moon. This is the most gentle beginning flow that we have in the book of the 10 variations. And so this was Maria. She was my student, and you see her showing, it shows you when to breathe in on the inhalation, then exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, and exhale. Very simple, very simple, very sweet. Easy to teach a large group, including beginners. Just notice how you feel in your body from having done a simple yoga flow. And gratitude for this practice. And I'm going to demonstrate now what we call the full circular moon salutation so that you can see it. I wouldn't normally teach this to a group that I don't know or beginners, but because I know some of you are master students and have been studying the postures at an advanced level, I feel that I want to give it to you. I will do the whole flow so you can feel it, and we'll talk it through after. Namaste. So I invite you to write in the chat what you noticed as you were observing. Like, what did it feel like, or what did you notice spiritually, psychologically, or just any observations you had? Put them into the chat. Calming. I can see myself doing this while I'm gazing at the moon, like an embodiment of the phases of the moon. It felt empowering, but also nurturing. What did you notice? Simpler version, a release in the neck. In watching the longer version, a sense of strength and intention. Beautiful. So feminine and flowy. Okay, what I want to do is I want to show you this sequence. There's three intermediate versions, and then also a modified version of this between the simpler one and this one, if you're teaching it to people or looking for different variations. But for tonight, I'm showing you the full, what we call the full circular. So I hope that's big enough. Chris, is that big enough on everybody's screen?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I want to talk this through, and then we are going to do it, but I just want to point out a few sticking points for some people who might need to modify. So it starts out the same as the three phases of the moon. We have the preparation. And I will say also that as far as breath, this is a variation that I was doing with one breath per movement. You can do it twice as slow, where you inhale while you're moving and exhale while you're holding. You can do 3 breaths per pose. You can flow in and out of the pose and then hold. So there's many, many different ways to breathe with it, but what I've written here is the movements that you would do if you were doing it at the pace that I was just doing it. So it has mountain, it has temple, crescent moon, temple, crescent moon, temple, and then you go into this goddess. This is one of the ones that feels very strong and empowering. And then what we call star, that's pose 8. Then triangle. Now we take 2 breaths for triangle, one to reach to the side and one to rotate the arms. So it's exhale to reach to the side, inhale to rotate the arms. Then we exhale, bring the hands down into pyramid. Inhale, lunge. Now, for whatever reason, I was inspired to add arms up, lunge, where you're lunge. I always do it a little different. This was more different than I often demonstrate this, but that was what felt right tonight. So you go to the lunge, and then you rotate. I'm going to say that this transition here from pose 12 to pose 13 can be difficult for people for multiple reasons. One, if they have tight hips, or 2, if they have pain in the knee, okay? So you're going to want to modify for any of those reasons. I can show you that before we all do it together. And then number 14, this is sometimes called a birthing squat. It's also known as the dark moon pose. You're going to recognize it from the pose of in traditional cultures, people laboring in the field, little kids breasting, people, this is a birthing pose. It is a squatting pose. It's not very common in our Western culture, but what I've spoke with a midwife in preparing my book, and she said in cultures where people commonly stand or rest or labor in this pose, or wait for the bus or pick the vegetables in this pose, birthing and the process of labor and delivery is much, much easier if women are used to this pose. The hips are more open. And then, so that's the middle. If you think about comparing the Sun Salutation to the Moon Salutation, the central pose of the Moon Salutation is a birthing squat. The central pose of the Moon Salutation is a very close to the earth, feet on the ground pose. Whereas the central pose of the Sun Salutation is cobra, right? Hips on the ground, heart up. They're energetically quite different, but they're the centerpiece. And again, if the hips are tight or the knees are tight, this pose becomes really challenging, so then you would want to modify. Now, coming out of it, you do and everything to the other side. So you're kind of like unwinding. I like to think of this as the going down of Persephone, or the going down of the goddess Inanna into the underworld. You get to the underworld. It's the heroine's descent to the underworld. You're very close to the ground here. And then you unwind and start to come to the other side. So then you do this half lunge to the other side, and then you turn to the second side and you're doing lunge the other way, pyramid. This is a tricky transition from pyramid to triangle because some people can lose their balance, especially beginners. So what you do is you keep your eyes down on your big toe and you just rotate your front arm around and up. And then after you have your balance, after you've opened your hips and shoulders into triangle, you turn the head. Inhale, star, goddess squat, step to temple, and then we're going to complete with the crescent moon sequence to both sides. Hands come down, and then blessing the body. So I'm just going to very briefly show you some modifications if anybody does have hip tightness. It's really common, right? Or knee pain. Actually show you, I need a chair. I'm going to just use this stool. It's a little high. This is a little high than I would normally do it, but most people can get to the lunge, right? When you come into the extended lunge, you're going to bring your hands, or extended leg squat, hands in. Watch out for, don't want to injure this knee, but you could actually do side warrior. Instead of keeping your hands down here, you could do side warrior. And instead of doing the full squat, you could do the goddess squat again. Yeah. You could go from side warrior to goddess squat and then side warrior on the other side, and then rejoin the group in lunge pose. You could also do some of that sitting on the stool. You could do the side lunge on your stool. You could do goddess squat on your stool, and then side lunge to the other side. So I would like to guide everybody through the full circular, and I'm going to just trust each of you to manage your own bodies. If you have a knee challenge, a hip challenge, do modifications, do it halfway. Chris, do you have anything you want to say before I slowly guide this through on time? No, we're good? Okay. And again, I can't see any of you, right? So I'm going to trust you each to do modifications. Yoga is always a practice of nonviolence and kindness. So if something doesn't feel right for your body, just know that I want to, because this is the master's program, give you the full circular, and I wouldn't necessarily do this with a group of people that I didn't know, but I want you to get to experience it. Okay. All right. Coming back onto your mat. And just taking a moment to bless yourself, invite in the energies of the full moon, and knowing that maybe when we're done tonight, you will get to go out and howl at her a little bit, and maybe I'll just howl for a moment. Oh, 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 oh! We live somewhere where there's actually coyote sounds at night. And knowing that all the animals feel the moon, the plants love the moon, gardens love the moon. All of life is blessed tonight and for the next 3 nights by the moon, the full moon. Reaching your fingers down, circling the arms up. Interlace fingers, extend the first finger up. Press into the ground and feel yourself becoming a temple for the energies of earth and sky traveling through your body. And we'll come into crescent moon, let the hips go left, upper body go right. Inhale up. Exhale, second side. Inhale up. And step the feet wide and come into goddess. So we're letting the hips drop down. Feel your pelvis opening to the earth. Breathe. Feel Mother Earth coming up into your body. Her energy, her strength. Inhale, star. So stretch your legs and your arms. Reach out wide. Embodying cosmic energies. We are made of stardust. And then rotate the feet towards the right. So I'm bringing my back foot in and turning out my front foot. Palms go down. And then reach the arms like you're sliding across the tabletop. And then rotate the arms, coming into triangle, Trikonasana. Now the head is in any position that feels comfortable. You can look down, forward, or up if that works for your neck. Sweep the top arm by the ear and bring it down. One hand on either side of your front foot. Now, you're going to adjust your hips so they're square towards your front knee. You might have your front knee a little bent. Relax the back of the neck. And feel the sense of quiet as you get ready to drop a little deeper towards the earth. And then bend that front knee and take the back foot a little further back, coming into a lunge. And since I was inspired, we're all going to do this just for a moment. Lift the arms up into a gentle warrior one. Look up. And then bring the hands back down. Now you have a choice. You might want to try the extended leg squat, or you might want to do side warrior, right? Of course, you always have a choice, but I'm just reminding you here. So we're going to bring the hands inside of this knee. If you're doing the extended leg squat, I bring the hands inside of the knee, and I bring my weight over the ball of the right foot. And I adjust myself to face forward. Now, if that was tricky, you can watch me again. Here I am in lunge. This transition can be hard when you're not used to it. I'm just bringing my hands inside of the knee and bringing the weight over the ball of that right foot and flexing my left foot to protect my knee. You want to protect this knee. Don't hyperextend your knee. Then if you're comfortable, walk the hands forward and drop the head, surrendering to Mother Earth. And now we're going to come into full squat. So bend your left leg and come into full squat. I'm going to show you a couple variations here. Some of you may have the heels off the ground, which is fine, but it just feels a little less grounding. So you can put a blanket or a cushion under the heels. Or you can sit on a block, right? Here's a block. Can you see it? I've got 3 sizes, very high, medium, and low. So you can sit on any of those heights. Or you can lean against a wall, or you can do the goddess pose we did earlier. You can do this on a chair, on your bed, on your couch. And feel that sense of being close to the earth in a full squat pose. Sending your prayers out to women who might be in labor right now. They have easy, smooth, healthy deliveries. And we're going to unwind to the other way. So if you're on a block, remove your block. And we're going to extend that right leg out. Again, don't hyperextend this knee. Flex the foot to protect your knee. You can also do this as a side warrior pose, right? You can do side warrior or extended leg squat. Take the hands forward, surrender the head. Walk the hands around towards the left. Adjust your hips so you're facing the left knee. Here we are in a lunge. Just take the hands up for a moment. And down. Straighten the front knee for pyramid. Shorten your stance. So I'm going to take my back foot that was a little bit stretched out. I'm going to bring it in about 6 inches or a foot. And then take the forehead towards that front knee. Now, preparing for triangle. Remember to keep your balance. Put your eyes on your big toe. Look at your big toe. Bring both of your hands up in front of the knee. My palms are touching in front of the knee. Then I'm going to take my right hand, circle it forward. I'm still looking at the big toe. I'm taking that hand up. I'm opening my hips and my shoulders. I'm still looking at the big toe. Once you feel that you're in triangle with your balance, turn the head and look up. And you're in triangle. Ta-da. Back up to star. Exhale, squat. Temple, step the feet together. And crescent moon right. And up. Crescent moon left. And up. And tracing the shape of the full moon. One hand to the belly, one hand to the heart. Receive. Breathe her in. Namaste. Beautiful. All right. I am going to open it up to questions or any comments you might have. Chris, I'm going to go back to my other camera and come sit down at my other chair. All right, here I come. Okay, we have a question. How would you approach a chair-seated version? Let me just take that. Well, that's a whole thing, but so now I'm sitting in my chair. Like I will sometimes at bedtime sit on the edge of the bed and I'm widening my legs. You can't see that part, but I'm widening my legs. Take the arms up. And then I might just go to one side, elbow on my knee. And up. Elbow on the other knee. And up. And I personally like to do twists. So this is actually one of the variations. There's one of the variations between, has a twist in it. And back up. And second side. And up. And then forward bend. So just like we did in 3 Phases of the Moon, you would come into a forward bend. I've got my desk here, so that's not going to work so well. I guess I can go under. Oh, that didn't work so well. Oof. So there's many ways to do chair variations, but that's a simple one that I like. Kathleen, thank you for the lovely and well demonstrated described bed practice. Oh, you're welcome, Kathleen. Nandini, thank you, Laura, for sharing the beautiful practice. You're welcome. Lori, since sun salutations are meant to be done in the morning as the sun rises, do you have a recommended time of day for this? Thank you, Lori, for that question. A lot of people that I know love practicing the moon salutation outdoors, if your weather permits, on the full moon. So this is a great night to be learning it. Of course, you could practice it all month long. It's especially good if you're needing calming, grounding, perimenopause, as I said, or if you're having your period and you want to do a standing practice. Sometimes when you're bleeding, you just want to do resting poses, restorative poses, and a nap. But if you want to do a standing practice, the moon salutation is great. And I would say full moons are great. New moons, some people do it at sunset. Michelle Wong. Squatting is a natural form of sitting in many other cultures and a sign of feminine strength, the power of birthing. Beautiful. Kia, opening of my heart and hips. Okay. How many repetitions? Well, ideally you wouldn't do just one side like we did. Ideally you would balance it out, because even though it is a circle and you get to all the poses, you're going to do triangle a little bit different when you enter it from above than when you enter it from below, especially, and some of the others you may do a little differently depending on how you enter them, such as even pyramid or the extended leg squat. But you know, I teach it in the women's writing and yoga circle that I have, and we often just do one with many, many variations. So I think one can be a container for a longer flow that holds other poses in it, and doing it to both sides is considered to be balanced. Would this also be the same practice for postmenopausal women? Yes, it is. So postmenopause is a really interesting time. Hopefully you come into balance, and you know, with goddess blessings, any challenging transition settle down. I will say some women continue to experience hot flashes for the rest of their lives. That's the minority, I believe. And so then the cooling is good, but you know, once you're postmenopausal, you're not having that cycling that you had, right, for those years of menstruation, where there's this monthly predictable, for most women, emotional cycle that goes with the bleeding cycle. And all of a sudden that, not all of a sudden, it balances out, and then you have more steady energy throughout the month. And so then it's about resting all month long, treating yourself like a queen all month long, and practicing the moon salutation perhaps on the moons. Do you have any other questions, Chris? Maybe we're done, or I could talk more about some of the other chapters of the book.
I'd like to hear about some of the other chapters of the book, maybe tying in some of the historic moments and planting cycles and whatever you care to share.
You know, I'm not an expert on planting cycles. We just are planting I'm planting my first garden ever. She's 2 months fertile out there and doing really, really well. And I've noticed she loves nighttime. The plants love the night, almost more than the daytime. They go, oh, it's nighttime. But there is traditional lore about planting in certain cycles of the moon, and some scientists say that's old wives' tale, although it makes a lot of sense to me given that there really is a different amount of light on full moon versus new moon. They used to say that interplanting was an old wives' tale. When certain plants that go together, companions, like carrots like tomatoes, which is the title of that book. Carrots love tomatoes. They do very well together, and some other plants. Now they're finding that the plants send out, not only do they take up certain nutrients that enhance others and have certain, they keep away bugs that like one plant because of their smell, but also that they send out fungal protection for certain plants. So they're finding that there is a science to companion planting. So maybe one day they'll come up with a science for the moon planting. Which historical part are you interested in? Or I'll say that the book has chapters on men, which I've mentioned some about men doing this as a balance. It has some about balancing the upper and lower chakras. And I think one chapter that's really important is women's self-image. And I will say that I'm coming to understand this is especially important for teenagers. I'm going to guess there's not very many teenagers here with us tonight, but that everyone in this room knows a teenager and a teenage girl. And the crisis of mental health for teenagers right now, boys and girls, pubescent men and women, is just massive. And I've been impressed with the few teenagers that I've been exposed to, how uncomfortable they are in their bodies and with their bodies. And, most of us who have practiced yoga for a long time, which I'm guessing is most people on this call, yoga, I believe, is one of the best tools to release our judgment of our bodies. It does make our bodies healthier, so you can feel good about yourself for making healthy choices. And yoga also, I believe, strengthens the healthy side of the ego to make healthy choices, like eating healthy food and getting to bed at a healthy time and going out for walks in the fresh air or at the beach or whatever is good for you. But people who haven't yet practiced yoga or done other things to improve their self-image, our culture does so much to not teach girls and boys how beautiful they are. And I believe the Moon Salutation is really good for teenage girls. So if you know a mom, or if you can, she might not want to learn it from her mom. She might rather learn it from her aunt or her grandmother. That you can do the Moon Salutation with and say, hey, this is for you to love your body because you're beautiful. I'm not beautiful. Look, I just had a sandwich and look at my tummy is sticking out. The number of girls who have eating disorders or pre-eating disorders, or who don't love their bodies, they don't love their hips, their tummies, their breasts, whatever it is really scary and troubling to me. And so if you can say, hey, this is to remind you to rest on your period. Why don't you take an extra nap and I won't ask you to help wash the dishes tonight? Or this, so there's a chapter in there about women's body image, and I've used this in women's circles, women in a circle, or look, when I used to teach at the Y, we would be looking at the mirror because there was mirrors at the Y, and here we don't have mirrors. And I would say to soften your eyes and imagine ourselves somewhere else, not at the Y, but maybe we're where there is animals or something like that. And when we finish, I would say, now imagine, look at how beautiful these women are, and remember they're seeing you as beautiful. If you're having trouble loving yourself, love another woman. If you're having trouble appreciating your own body, appreciate another woman, because a lot of women will have an easier time giving a put up or cheerleading for another woman. And then once she does that, it's easier to transfer it to herself. Okay, someone's going off to moonbathe. My apologies, you may have already answered this, but does one do this on both sides? Or no, you can absolutely do it on both sides, Gayatri. Absolutely do it on both sides. I will say for me, you know, I started practicing the Moon Salutation now 30 years ago. And I mean, I was a completely different person there, so it's almost impossible to talk about it. But I really had a lot of work to do to learn to love my body. And it was something I had been consciously addressing. I did have an eating disorder in my college years, and I had anxiety and depression. And then I got chronic fatigue after college. I was very sickly. That's what brought me to yoga. I did not have an easy childhood. I had a wonderful childhood in some ways. I love the religion of my parents, but I was molested by my father. And there was not emotional maturity in my family, or I would say even in my community. And so those were things that I had to learn on my own. And learning to love my body didn't come easy to me. But I was already attending to it before yoga, and I came to yoga when I had chronic fatigue. And I actually had it for a couple of years, and then I fell at work and I hurt my back. And I got to go to a chiropractor, which I had never been to before. And the chiropractor said, you have an immune problem, you have chronic fatigue, and you need to come to my yoga class. I'm like, never been to that. And the next day, actually, after the class, I had energy. I couldn't believe it. I could go out at night and dance. And so I started doing yoga. I found that it balanced my emotions. And then I learned the Moon Salutation, and I just started doing it in circles. So for me, it was the combination of the embodiment of yoga and women's circles, and then all the soul work that I was doing with, yes, therapy, but also just my own spiritual work. The combination of women's circles and yoga really over 30 years has just helped everything to balance in many, many beautiful ways.
It's so beautiful. I really appreciate your depth of sharing. And I'm wondering, Charlotte, if you could unmute and share a little bit of your response to this. And I'm introducing Charlotte as a professor of Emeritus College at Santa Monica, where she teaches Qigong. And for 20 years, she taught yoga at Loyola Marymount University.
Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, Laura. I remember you at the last green conference we had at Loyola. And I certainly remember the first green conference up at the Buddhist sanctuary and somewhere near Santa Cruz. And the beautiful day at the beach that I had with the lady who lives in Vermont. She has a farm in Vermont, and she led us on a beautiful beach walk.
Jillian, yeah.
Yes. So that day of doing yoga at the beach and doing drishti, gazing at each other and walking in silence and making mandalas on the sand and having a nap on the sand and we in partners covering with sand. Those practices have stayed with me a great deal. That was a wonderful day.
Jillian Comstock was her name. Comstock, I think, yeah.
Yes. I like the rounded circle, the lateral, wide, rounded movement a great deal. It feels very feminine and it feels good.
Beautiful, beautiful. Perhaps we're done, Chris.
Okay, we're getting some appreciations in the chat. And if any of you would like to be in touch with you could pull this and contact Laura through her portal there. And I just feel such happiness in reconnecting. I feel this opening in my back and neck from having done the crescents. And I so agree, and you articulated that so nicely, that so much of our movement in our very busy culture is so forward moving, and that to take the time to do the more gentle crescent shape is just really lovely. And part of what I've done all these years is just gather in a little bit and then make that part of that. I also want to commend the book to everyone and to just again say that we're blessed that we have the moon, we're blessed that we have one another, we're blessed that we get the Zoom moonlight, such as it is, and that we all have found the need for resilience and patience through these difficult times. And these sorts of practices provide the grounding that we need to sustain. So again, thank you so much, Laura. And I really am so delighted to connect.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.